All right, as we're waiting for board members to join, Matthew Roberts, can you try to raise your hand?
Well, I don't see Matthew. Oh, yes, I do see him on the call.
Yeah, he's on. So Matthew, can you confirm you can raise your hand?
Will,
Yep.
on my iPad, I've never been able to find where the hand is.
Yeah, so Matthew, if you look at the three dots for more options, or not, sorry, not that. If you open up the participant list,
Okay, I see those.
if you go all the way to the bottom, at the very bottom, you should see a hand down there.
No, sir.
Okay, so Todd, when we tested this, it was on the iPad. Do you know where?
I don't know. I'm looking real quick.
Okay. Okay. Well, while Todd's looking at that, Sarah, can you try to raise your hand?
I don't see that. I don't see it.
Oh, you don't.
No.
Okay.
It's in the
It's in the participants list. So you open up participants, and at the bottom.
and I see a chance to mute myself. I see your hand raised. Oh, wait. I see it. Here we go.
Okay. Perfect.
Got it.
Okay, Hillary. Perfect. See Matthew. You're still looking. Okay. Dr. Halkiotis, can you raise your hand? Like he's almost through. Dr. Halkiotis, can you attempt to raise your hand? Looks like his audio is not on. Hey, Brenda, can you try to raise your hand?
Let's see.
It's really small. It's underneath where it says
Very
view all attendees. There's a
Right.
tiny hand.
Tiny.
Oh, let me see. Oh, let's get glasses. Let's get some glasses. Okay.
Yeah, I have to lean in to find it.
All right.
Sure.
I'll find it. And
Okay.
Well, we do have at least one person who's asked to speak to matters on the agenda, so I'll send that to you shortly.
I just oh yeah. I have my glasses. I see it now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's unraised. It's unraised.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Todd, any update on the location for the iPad?
I'm searching right now. I'm not coming up with anything. I thought that Dr. H was on the iPad, so.
I am.
Can you raise your hand, Dr. H, on yours?
I just punched it. Does it show it now?
Yeah, it does. You should see it on your screen as well.
I do.
Dr. Halkiotis, where did you find it?
Seek and ye shall find. It was the biblical process. I've got it on the middle screen. I can't find it anywhere else on the screen.
If I found it again. Yeah. What does this say?
So it was on the bottom of the participant list is what it said whenever we did this as a test. Okay, have you still not found it?
Oh,
Todd, could you mute yourself?
Sorry.
You're intensely typing. All right, so you can't find it, Matthew, and Dr. H, yours was yours under the participant list? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Dr. H.
Yeah, the only place I can find it is on the participant list that's showing up in the middle of my screen.
Okay, so in the middle of your
I
screen.
use that, that's okay.
Okay, but the issue is Matthew can't find his on his iPad.
Yeah, my participant list, Todd, is at the very bottom. It's not at the middle. Is there a way that I can minimize participant list?
You can click away from it, or you can click the blue button. It should be the fifth button from the left, the third from the right. It should say close participants.
Okay, there is not a blue button on my screen.
Okay. Do you see a button with people and 3 lines, like a profile and 3 lines on it near the middle?
I'm going all the way over to the end. It just does, none of that shows on my screen.
Can you hold on one sec? When you move your cursor near the bottom of your screen, you don't see a series of buttons there?
You may have to click on the bottom to see them.
Nope.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend that, Matthew, what we'll have to do is once we get to a portion to speak, I will look for hands to be raised, and then I'll explicitly ask if you have a question, and then you can unmute to identify that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll unmute to identify that I have a question.
Okay, well, remain muted till we get to each section with that. All right, and then we'll set up a separate tech session, hopefully with Todd and team, to see what's going on with your specific device. All right, we'll call this meeting to order. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect to fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves in the same courtesy towards both school personnel and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rule of Order will be used to conduct meetings. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. In addition to moment of silence at each meeting held at a school site, the board will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The board asks that you check your cell phones or other electronic devices to be certain they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruption of the meetings. We will now have a moment of silence. All right. Next, we have the agenda adoption. I see Dr. Halkiotis, you have your hand up. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Dr. H, sorry.
Adoption of the agenda as shown with the revised personnel report.
Okay, we have a motion from Dr. Halkiotis. Do we have a second?
Second from Brenda Stevens.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All right, Tony McKnight,
Yes.
okay. Hillary,
No.
okay. Matthew Roberts,
Yes.
Brenda Stevens,
Yes.
okay. Dr. Halkiotis,
Yes.
Sarah Smiley,
No.
and I vote yes. Motion carries.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Next on the agenda is public comments. Since this is a work session, public comments will be done to the agenda item after the item is presented.
Gotta have 3 votes.
All right. With that, the next item would be the consent agenda.
What's the consent?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, Sarah Smiley with a motion. Tony McKnight with the second. Okay.
Will, can I have a point of order? I don't really know how to do this, but I have a clarification question.
Sure.
To make motions like that, should I have raised my hand? And then if so, I see that Dr. Halkiotis' hand has been raised sort of the whole time. So I think, are you unraising them or how are we?
I cannot unraise them. There he went. Thank you, Dr. H.
So to make a motion, should we unmute ourselves or should we raise our hands?
Raise your hand. The only one that can't do that would be Matthew Roberts. And that way I can just call on whoever is wanting to speak.
Make a motion. Okay.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. We'll start with Hillary McKenzie for the consent agenda. Okay. Dr. Halkiotis.
Yes.
Okay. Brenda Stevens. Okay. Brenda.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Matthew Roberts.
Yes.
Okay. Tony.
Yes.
And then Sarah.
Aye.
And Will is an aye as well. Motion carries. All right. Moving to action items. First item on the agenda is policy 2122, complaints against individual board members. I want to first say this discussion is split into 2 different parts. The first part of the discussion is policy 2122, complaints against individual board members only. This policy has been confirmed by the North Carolina School Boards Association as a policy that does not exist in any other school district or any other known government office. It's expected that each board member will work out its differences between each other versus advocating them to the chair, superintendent, and attorney and costing the district an attempt to resolve versus board using restorative practice. This policy has already cost the students in Orange County schools over $19,000 alone this year. We need to focus on the success of our students. The recommendation before the board is to rescind this policy and board members work through restorative practices and work through our differences as we teach our students in our district. I'll turn it over first to Jonathan to just give any overview from a legal aspect on this.
This is just the pleasure of the board on whether or not to rescind the existing policy. It is something that would be by majority vote, 4 votes of the members present, and so that this is fundamentally a policy question for the board about whether to retain or not retain the policy. Thanks.
All right, Hillary, you have your hand up.
Chair Atherton, 1 year and 12 nights ago, having conspired with the other men on this board, you voted to oust Chair Stevens 3 meetings before her term was scheduled to end. In an unprecedented power grab that undermined the professionalism of this board and highlighted the role that gender and race have historically played in the way this board has operated. Thus, it seems the perfect bookend to your chairmanship that tonight you seek to use your position as the agenda setter to rescind the only policy this board has that attempts to hold one another accountable to board member ethics, board policy, and indeed the law. For a district that is set forth to center restorative justice within our schools, I find it disappointing that you've failed to acknowledge how unjust your actions feel to many of your colleagues after repeated attempts to discuss this concern about this agenda item with you. While I'm certainly in agreement that policy 2122 should be reviewed and probably revised, the appropriate channel for such a conversation is through the board's policy committee. Furthermore, this issue should be tabled until the newly elected board is sworn in this summer, at which time the board members who will be governing together for the next 2 years can discuss norms and expectations for one another. Most importantly, a quorum of board members who are not compromised by being named in unresolved complaints can decide how to move forward with each issue. Tonight, I will vote against rescinding policy 2122 because I believe that our constituents expect the highest standard of board member transparency and oversight, as well as our dedicated compliance to policy and law. As a board member, I expect to see the work product of the investigation into a complaint I filed for which OCS spent over $10,000 due to its legitimacy and the length of time to interview witnesses. To be clear, I do not wish for the district to spend any more money on these complaints. I simply expect to see the work that was done for the money our district has already spent before resolving them. I cannot stand by while the person who is named in said complaint votes it away because it's an inconvenient issue for us to navigate. Those on this board who are committed to justice and to holding one another accountable, which demonstrates to staff and to our community the democratic values that we claim to hold dear, should vote against an unethical waiver of policy as well.
All right, Ms. McKenzie, can you lower your hand? All right. Dr. Halkiotis?
I'm going to offer a little different opinion, Mr. Chair. In an effort to constructively resolve the complaints and keep our focus on children during this pandemic, let me start by saying I am officially withdrawing my individual complaint against Board Member McKenzie, and I wanted to go further tonight to help resolve the complaints that are still hanging out there. And furthermore, I'll be officially apologizing for the manner that I communicated with Ms. McKenzie during the retreat last school year at Corporate Drive. I previously apologized to Board Member McKenzie during our private mediation session last year with the representative from the Dispute Settlement Center. Finally, in terms of the complaint against the former board chair, Brenda Stevens, I am willing to join with other board members to withdraw that complaint. The board has approved policies that address in a positive way the concerns identified in that complaint. I hope my actions tonight help this board move forward in a positive way, avoid future time and expense on these board issues so that we can keep our eye clearly focused on the health, safety, and education of our children during this pandemic and can avoid any further burden on our amazing superintendent, Dr. Felder, who certainly has her hands full and doesn't need to be witnessing all of these actions on the part of adults that we hopefully all can work together in a positive way for all the children of Orange County Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Halkiotis. So just to close out with what you said, Matthew, are you willing to withdraw your complaint against the prior chair?
Yes, I am. That it's time to put this behind and allow the new board to come in and not be focused on our differences. So I have no problem withdrawing my complaint.
All right, Tony McKnight.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear it. We can hear you now.
So I totally agree. We've spent too much time and money into this. So I withdraw my complaint from the past chair as well.
All right, and I will withdraw mine as well. I just wanted to close that out, so those complaints are gone, but we need to focus back in on the discussion of policy 2120 or 2122. Are there any other comments of specific to that policy? Okay, let's see, Sarah Smiley.
My two thoughts are similar to Ms. McKenzie's, which is I think the proper way to discuss this policy, revise it, remove it, would be to go through the policy committee. And that I would like to see an impartial quorum of the board be the ones to do that, because I think it's challenging to do it given the context.
All right, Dr. Halkiotis.
I want to make a motion that we go ahead and send policy 2122.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Dr. Halkiotis, and we have a second from Matthew Roberts. Before we go into discussion, I would like to pause, and we do have one person that would like to comment on this before we vote, Ms. Jamie Paulin. Todd, can you promote her and make sure we time?
Well, I also see Ms. Stevens' hand raised.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Well, it's Miss Paulin. Okay, Miss Paulin is on.
That's okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Miss Paulin.
I'm sorry, am I supposed to be speaking or is Miss Stevens speaking?
You were speaking, and then Miss Stevens will be able to speak after you.
I've been following this matter pretty closely, and to see the individuals who are implemented in one of the complaints attempt to waive away this policy, especially given the very valid concerns that have been raised by Ms. McKenzie and Ms. Smiley, is just representative of exactly why the people of Orange County have spoken and have made the decision to replace those individuals. It's just really unethical to be a person who has a complaint against them and then vote to waive away that complaint in light of very valid concerns that have been raised. And as a person that lives in this county, I'm incredibly ashamed of the way that this is being handled.
Thank you, Miss Paulin. Todd, if you can put her back in the listening poll. And Miss Brenda Stevens.
I was simply going to say, moving forward, I think it's important for our legal counsel to advise, moving forward, new board members that complaints 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many there were, they shouldn't have happened. So moving forward, it's important for our attorney to advise school board members on what's appropriate and what is not, if we're spending that kind of money on legal counsel. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Halkiotis, do you have a comment? Your hand's up?
No, I just had made the motion.
Okay, if you can lower your hand.
It's got to get lowered right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we have our discussion, before we go through the motion? Okay. see, Sarah Smiley.
No.
Okay. Dr. Halkiotis.
Yes.
Okay. Hillary McKenzie.
Nay.
Okay. Tony McKnight.
Yes.
Okay. Brenda Stevens.
No.
Okay. Matthew Roberts.
Yes.
Okay. And Will Atherton is a yes. Motion carries. All right. Second part of this discussion, I know that we're going to have a change of attorneys. Rod is on. For the second part of the discussion, on how to handle the actual complaints themselves, to give everyone a timeline and a quick overview without going into specifics of the complaint. The first complaint was on March 1st, 2019, and a second one on March 4th, 2019. Under the prior chair and two superintendents ago, after that in May, multiple complaints were opened, and I had a meeting with the attorney and the superintendent per policy, where I was informed that the first complaint was already over $10,000 and was expected to cost over $20,000 minimum for that one alone, and an estimated $120,000 minimum investigation to review all other complaints. At that point, I asked for all work in the investigations to be stopped after learning what had been spent. I spoke to board members to approach mediation. We all agreed. After mediation ended around January, two complaints from the May were closed, but others remained open. I set up a special meeting in April to have a meaningful conversation on this matter, but the meeting was canceled due to my mother passing. A second special meeting was attempted to be set up, and the full board did not respond to picking a date, which left this to be on this work session agenda. This has been a distraction to the board and has already cost the board over $19,000 in tax dollars and needs to be resolved by this board so we can focus on our student, staff, and communities we serve, especially during this pandemic. With that, Rod, can you give us the options of what we have? I just want to highlight at this point, there are only two outstanding complaints in the board.
Yes, I'm happy to help. So the basic options that I see for the board would be either to obviously go forward with the investigation of the complaints, or in looking at the policy options, to the board, even though the board has rescinded the underlying policy, these complaints were filed at a time when the policy was in place. So the board could choose to suspend the application of the policy to these complaints. The complaints would then still exist, obviously, but there would not be a policy requirement that that they be investigated and reported out. So it's the policy that obviously requires the investigation, and by suspending the policy, the board would be able to effectively allow the complaints to be closed.
All right. So, Ms. McKenzie, I see your hands raised, and given the two outstanding complaints are in your area, please.
So what I was going to say is that I'm happy to drop the complaint number 6. However, due to the serious nature of the first complaint, and due to the fact that we know that it was the event in question happened in open session and may encompass events that have happened many times, I simply cannot drop that complaint. I expect for our law firm to share the work product that has been done thus far. Again, I am not asking for the school district to spend more money, but for this board, which is so highly conflicted, and for which there is such a deep divide, to be voting this down when it is an extremely serious concern, I simply cannot drop it. I have asked this not to be a public debate. I sent you a letter requesting that this be a conversation that we resolve not being in the public. But since you wanted to do it this way, here we are, and I will not vote for that, and I will not drop that complaint.
I'll just point out, Ms. McKenzie, I've attempted to set up a special meeting and that was unsuccessful. I do
Because
know.
when women tell you no over and over again and you force issues, it can be a bit triggering.
So, Ms. McKenzie, I respectfully disagree. You can't avoid a discussion because it's difficult. The issue is
I'm not the one who failed to complete mediation. I operated in good faith, cooperating with every single thing that happened in these investigations.
So we have a public apology. What are you expecting to become out of the results
I
of?
would like to see the work product from the $10,000 that our school district has spent before we vote to resolve the issue.
So, Rod, can you talk to the what it would take to release that?
Melissa in our office is reviewing it now. I don't know if she completed her investigation today, but she is looking into it and what can and can't be released. And I would think that in the coming days she'll be able to respond. But it certainly is a high priority item, and she is reviewing it now. As you know, she was involved in the investigation, so she's been tasked with doing that.
I respect that, and my attorney has been in touch with Ms. Michaud. I just also want to point out that when Dr. Halkiotis and I went to mediation, we completed the discussion about my complaint against him, and he failed to provide any context for the very serious allegations he leveled against me in a retaliatory fashion. So to be surprised that I am digging my feet in and want to see the result of this initial investigation doesn't seem reasonable.
Comment.
So, okay, Dr. Halkiotis,
Just a couple of comments. Number one, the commentary that I made towards Ms. McKenzie took place after the meeting had adjourned. You were the chair you were present at that meeting, and I believe Brenda Stevens was the chair, and the minutes will show that the comments I made towards her, referring to her as a young lady and telling her to grow up, which I deem now, I apologize for, they were inappropriate because she was offended by it, and I can fully understand that. Those comments were made after the meeting was adjourned. Secondly, I chose to hold my complaint against her in abeyance for one specific purpose. I knew that was going to cost the school system another $30,000 or $40,000. I didn't want to expend that kind of money when we could be using that for instruction and for teachers and teacher assistants. It was that simple. I'll be leaving this board after 2 more meetings. And to me, it becomes a moot point. I don't understand the futility in this whole thing. We have an exchange of ideas. We have a different perspectives. But this policy is costing the children of Orange County schools a lot of money. And we are saddled with this policy. We're the only LEA in the state of North Carolina or any elected body that has a policy like this. It's ludicrous, and it's a waste of taxpayer money. And I'll stop right there.
so Rod, since Ms. McKenzie does want to go forward with this, one question I do have for you is that per the policy, since Dr. Halkiotis has actually apologized and acknowledged the complaint, it appears that me, the superintendent, and the attorney can actually process this complaint at this point.
I certainly would think so, and you would have the apology as part of the remedy that would be available to you. So I certainly think that that is a reasonable way to proceed. If suspending the policies application is not something that the majority of the board wants to do. Well, like 2/3 majority of the board wants to do. Sorry. But no, that certainly is an answer. I mean, I've got the policy pulled up here on my other screen, and that certainly is a reasonable result.
So, Will, you've recused yourself from this complaint.
So Hillary,
You have already said in writing that you recuse yourself from this complaint.
So Hillary, the complaint, I'm not making a decision at this point. Dr. Halkiotis has already said that he acknowledges what you complained with. I'm not sure what extra you're looking for beyond that.
I'm looking for the work product of the staff that was interviewed and the full extent of why that investigation cost so much money.
So that's easily provided. This is
That's what I want.
You will get that. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
so you said, what would it take? And I said, I would like to see the work product. I'm not asking to spend more money.
Okay, we will, because the attorney will have to go through it to determine what will be public record and what will not be. So some of that will be blacked out based on that, I believe. I don't know. So Rod, can you describe how much money this will cost to have that work product reviewed?
Unfortunately, I was not involved in the earlier part of the investigation, so I'm not sure how much material there is to be reviewed. I just know that Melissa is looking at it now pursuant to the request, and as Hillary said earlier, her lawyer has been in conversations with Melissa. I didn't know that, but I did know that Melissa was going to reach out to her. So, but I'm not in a position to provide an estimate of what it will cost to complete the review of the materials, because I have no idea how much material there are.
Well, yeah, so she's asking for the materials. I just want to highlight, it's not going to be a zero cost, but there will be cost to do that.
So because staff has complained about respect from this board as well, I feel like it's really important to uphold protecting our staff and oversight of this board and holding one another accountable. So what is on the agenda is not me dropping complaints. So if you would like to call for a motion for what's on the agenda, go for it, but you're not going to get me to drop it.
Okay, I just want to point out, Hillary, again, this will cost additional funds to do this. And given that Dr. Halkiotis has acknowledged the complaint, that you
don't need to repeat yourself, Will. I heard you the first time.
Okay, so I will, based on Rod's.
We can continue to have this conversation, but you pressuring me to drop this complaint does not need to happen right now, right here. I know you would like to make it look like I want to spend the money that should be spent on children of Orange County, but I would like to see how much it will cost. I would like to see the work product that we spent $10,000 on, and then I will make a determination whether I would like to drop the complaint. But if you would like to call a motion for what is on the agenda, please feel free.
So just not calling for a motion, but Rod, could you just highlight what the results of a complaint will result in?
Can I highlight what the results of the complaint would? Oh, you mean based on what the policy says?
Yes.
Right. So according to the policy, the chair, superintendent, and school board attorney would conduct a review to determine whether or not there was a violation of ethics, law, or policy. The review would give, obviously, an opportunity to respond. And then it basically says that the board chair will notify all the members of the board of the outcome of any review of the policy. So theoretically, you would conduct the investigation, which arguably you could conclude based on what we've heard today that Mr. Halkiotis has acknowledged it and he's apologized. And that would kind of be your announcing of the outcome. And then if the review establishes a violation of ethics, law, or policy, then you are able to decide whether or not some additional action might take place. But in this particular situation, I could see that the chair could conclude that an apology is the appropriate result. So one could certainly, under the policy, reach that conclusion.
So respectfully, I just want to say that this investigation that interviewed staff, that cost us $10,000, I'm shocked that an apology is what we're going for here. My concern is that the staff interview may have disclosed some of the concerns that Mr. Malone just outlined. And I think that it is appropriate for this board to review those notes before a conclusion is drawn.
So you believe that there was some law broken?
I believe that it's possible.
That there was something that we need to refer to the DA. That's what you're saying?
Well, I wouldn't know if I haven't reviewed the file well.
Wow. Okay.
My hand up.
Yes, Dr. Halkiotis.
Okay, since I now have the floor, I'm calling a question to end this discussion.
Okay.
Well, I don't technically think anybody's made a motion yet.
Right. So we don't have a motion. Is there any other discussion from any board member so we can move on? If there isn't a motion, we're just going to move on, which is perfectly fine.
Hands up.
Yeah. Okay.
Making a motion, we need to move on from these complaints. Let's take it to a vote.
Okay. If we take this to a vote, this will require a 2/3 vote.
Second.
Assuming the motion is to suspend the policy's application to what I understand now to be the one remaining complaint, if that were the motion, then yes, it would require a 2/3 vote.
Okay, we have a motion from Dr. Halkiotis. We have a second from Matthew Roberts. All right. Brenda Stevens.
I need some clarification. There's been so much said here and I'm a little lost. Help me understand about redacting and paying to redact investigations that's coming to the school board.
I do not know the answer to that question. What I know is that we got the letter I saw it over the weekend. We've asked Melissa to review the letter and to review the investigative notes and to determine whether or not they can be released. There is certainly a question regarding whether a single board member would have the ability to request the information, or whether it would require some waiver of attorney-client privilege or the like for the information to be released. And we just needed a little time to sort through those issues. so that we could make sure that we're giving the board good advice about its options. Unfortunately, we got, or at least to my knowledge, we got the letter just in the last day or two. So that is the issue.
But we would be charged while y'all are looking into this.
Well, I think that that's open to discussion. All I want to see is the work that's already been done, and there's no reason that we should be charged for that.
Will,
I know that you would like to paint me in a really bad picture, Will. I think that you should continue the vote because there's a motion and a second on the table.
And Brenda has asked for clarity, and I'm trying to get clarity if you would allow us to. So Rob, can you confirm, yes or no, that there will be charges to gather the information regardless?
Historically, yes, we would charge for this work unless Jonathan chooses for some other reason not to charge. But historically, yes, we would charge for the work.
All right. So Brenda?
Yeah, right. So I was just trying to get clarification because in my head, I understand that board policy requires that we as a board should see results of investigations. And I think that's in like policy 2450. So I'm just kind of at a loss here. So just go on and take your vote. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, well, you're up, Ms. Stevens. It's a yes or no, please.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, Ms. Stevens, I asked for your vote.
Right. I said, did you hear me? I said no.
Okay, you said no. Thank you. All right, Tony McKnight,
Yes.
okay, Hillary,
No.
okay, let's see, Matthew Roberts,
yes.
okay, Sarah,
No.
okay, and myself, I will vote no, and motion does not carry. We are moving now to student fees. Rod, are you switching over to having Jonathan join back?
Yes, I don't know. I'm supposed to text the call, so I'll do that right now. He should be back. Will Todd be able to let me know when he's up?
Yes, we will see him in the participant list.
Okay, great. Oh yeah, I forgot I can do that.
He has not joined yet.
Colin.
Thanks, Will.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you for joining.
All right, I'm gonna drop off now. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Felder, student fees, 2020 to 2021.
Yes, Mr. Atherton. So is going to speak to this item?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, board members and Superintendent Dr. Felder. The purpose of this action item is to provide the Board of Education with the proposed student fees for the 2020-2021 school year. After the May 4th school board meeting in which we presented the proposed student fees, the following adjustments were made after receiving feedback from the board. $15 were added as a fee for a course t-shirt at all three middle schools. We removed the $5 Gravelly Hill Middle School course fees. A $10 ag fee was added at Cedar Ridge High School. We corrected the tux fee at Cedar Ridge High School for $100. I believe that it was originally listed as 10. We also added the $340 band fee at Orange High School. And as a reminder, the band fee at Orange High School will be readdressed after the hiring of the new band teacher. Also, at the last board meeting, we mentioned that we're going to step up our efforts to ensure that students and families know about our fee waivers. We're doing so because we believe that is the right thing to do, and we heard loud and clear from our families at our district Listen and Learns that oftentimes families are not aware of the waiver process. Also, finally, Ms. McKenzie brought up looking at parking fees for next year and possibly reimbursing students if they're out of school for an extended period of time. We have begun that conversation with the high school principals, and now we're trying to figure out how that will look and some of the nuances. But the high school principals are definitely on board. We're trying to make it fair for our students and families. At this time, I open the floor for any questions.
All right, Sarah Smiley.
I just want to thank you again for making the fee waivers making more of the community aware of those. I think that's really important. Just wanted to thank you again for that.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments from any board members? All right, could we get a motion from a board member?
Motion to approve fees.
So Matthew, I heard you as a primary.
Second, Sarah Smiley.
Sarah Smiley is a second. All right. Tony McKnight. Tony, can you hear us?
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hi.
Okay. We have Sarah Smiley.
Aye.
Okay. Matthew Roberts. Okay. Brenda Stevens.
Aye.
Hillary McKenzie.
Aye.
Dr. Alkiotis.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Okay, motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda are the contracts. All right, is Miss Sarah Pitts taking us through this?
Good evening, board. So we're going to start tonight with the first contract, which is actually a change order to an existing contract, and we're going to have Nick Mincy, our Director of Facilities and Constructions, walk you through this.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, board.
Good evening.
So the first item tonight for action is a review and consideration for approving the requested change order number 4 for American South General Contractors as part of the new classroom addition at Cedar Ridge High School. And the scope of the work includes the design and construction for the addition to the high school there. Following a request for proposal process on May 26, 2015, the board endorsed Corley Redfoot as the designer for this building. The 2016 bond provided funding for the classroom addition work to begin. So formal bids utilizing the designs provided by Corley Redfoot were solicited in May of 19 and opened publicly in May of 2019. American South General Contractors is the low bid and is responsible bidder for this project. So Corley Redfoot has reviewed the request to determine that they are required additions to the project specifications and have been negotiated to the lowest cost for the owner. The requests in the change order fall into the 2 following categories. So the first category is related to code compliance and life safety, includes a new sprinkler requirement for the addition and to allow compatibility with the current building at a total cost of $30,400. $462.28. And then the second portion of the change order is an owner request to realign the pumps to provide efficiency in operation for the chilled water system at a total cost of $28,188.78. So change order number 4 was received on April 6th, and the contract sum will be increased to include the change order. And the total project for the budget, $11,788,500. Current change orders received so far, $37,294.56. And then this contract change order in the amount of $58,651.06 for a new contract sum of $11,884,445.62. So this time, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve change order number 4 to American South General Contractors and authorizes the superintendent to approve change orders pursuant to board policy up to the available funding, and authorize the chair to sign the contract on behalf of the board. And we are bringing this request tonight after discussions with Dr. Felder, and I brought this to you for your approval.
Well, you're muted, but I think I saw you mouth my name. Did you call on me because I have my hand raised?
Yes, thank you. I did. I was on mute. Go ahead.
Mr. Mincy, I was just curious, can you remind me when the project is scheduled to be completed, the addition?
Yes, the goal is sometime in November, depending on weather. The current contract is carrying about 11 or 12 days of weather, inclement weather at this point. And obviously we have from now till November. So, but mid to end November, we should near substantial completion.
And that's pretty much, that's on track from what we'd.
Yes, we are definitely on track. And the contractor, like I say, is just carrying those days right now, just as good measure.
All right, we have Tony McKnight.
Well, my question was basically the same as Sarah's. But since I'm on, I'd like to make a motion to approve superintendent's recommendation.
I've got a comment.
Okay, we have a comment. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have Tony McKnight as the primary motion and Sarah Smalley second. Discussion. Dr. Halkiotis. Tony, if you could raise your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Nick Mincy, what has changed in the state code? Because the original sprinkling requirements by the state of North Carolina for Cedar Ridge, which resulted in the water tank being built on the Grady Brown property across the street, was a direct need to sprinkler the auditorium, especially the prop rooms where there historically have been problems across high schools in North Carolina. So what's prompting this change with respect to the addition?
Okay, so Dr. H, this change is being driven by a physical need. The elevation of the existing building tying into the elevation of the new building. In order to provide the correct connection at that point, there has to be some adjustments made. This is due to some sprinkler heads that were required by the fire marshal and the local fire inspections. In order for us to correctly install these to the current code, the 2015 code, these are adaptations that need to be made. So
this isn't a state requirement. This is something from the local fire marshal. Is that correct?
No, sir. The building has to be sprinkled as a whole. There has to be sprinkling coverage for that building. This is just an effect of the project itself. This is
because the rest of the school is not sprinklered.
So when we constructed the new gymnasium, the accessory gym, that building is sprinkled.
Okay.
So as time has gone on, the code has changed, and now we are required to provide sprinkling coverage in the building.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other discussion from any board member? All right. We'll start off with Sarah,
Aye.
Tony McKnight,
Aye.
Hillary McKenzie,
Aye.
Matthew Roberts.
Aye.
Okay, Brenda Stevens,
Aye.
Dr. Alkiotis.
Yes.
Okay, and chair is yes as well. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Nick.
All right. For the second item tonight, we have a project for Pathways Elementary. The purpose for this project is to consider awarding a bid and approving a construction contract. It's contingent upon attorney review to H.M. Kern Corporation. It's for the exterior drainage construction project at Pathways Elementary. So the Board of Education completed a study of the facilities in 2013, and projects were identified that needed to be addressed. One of those projects is at Pathways Elementary. Pathways Elementary, as part of that package, was a bid on June 10th, 2019. The scope of this work project included the following: some minor demolition, grading, stormwater and erosion and sediment control, concrete paving, seeding of lawns, and some lawn restoration areas. So the bids utilizing the design were provided by the Timmons Group, working with Mosley Architects. They were solicited and opened on May 5th of 2020. Two companies responded with bids. H.M. Kern Corporation submitted the lowest responsible bid that was appropriate, and a copy of the certified bid tab has been attached to your package. So Orange County Schools strives to provide health and safe environments for staff and students to work, and that's part of the goal of this project. So funding for this project has been allocated through capital improvement funds in the amount of $50,000. The base bids ranged from $40,500 to $50,426. H.M. Kern submitted the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $40,500. So at this point, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education award a bid and contract to H.M. Kern Corporation not to exceed the amount of $40,500, contingent upon the attorney review of the contract documents, authorizes the superintendent to approve change orders pursuant to board policy up to the available funding amount, and to authorize the chair to sign the contract on behalf of the board. Thank you.
All right, Sarah.
Yes, just a question. I see on the tabulated bid tab document, a number of companies are listed as past. Can you just say more about what that means?
I am sorry, I am at home and I don't have that bid document in front of me. Maybe Sarah can address that. She's got that copy.
Ms. Smiley, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so the document that's called Pathways Certified Bid Tab, I think it's that one. There's basically the two companies that did make a bid, and then there are 5 others that it says passed rather than making a bid.
So
That means they showed interest in the beginning with the architect and the civil engineering firm, but did not produce a final bid prior to the bid opening.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions or comments from board members? All right. Do we have a motion?
Move adoption.
Okay, Dr. Alkiotis with the motion.
Second.
Okay, that was, I first heard Matthew. Okay, Hillary McKenzie.
Aye.
Okay, Tony McKnight.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Dr. Alkiotis.
Yes.
Brenda Stevens.
Aye.
Matthew Roberts.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much, Sarah and Nick Mincy.
thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All right. The next item on the agenda is a request to purchase land.
And I'll take that one, and then Dr. Felder, Sarah could jump in. I believe this is really here more as an information item to let the board know about the request to sort of entertain from the board negotiations on selling some lots by that boundary Miller Road in Hillsborough. You've got the materials that are in the agenda items, and that basically, I think at this point, it's my understanding that staff did want the whole board to be aware of it and to entertain any comments that board members made, but that staff would then sort of do an impact assessment to determine whether the school district still foresees a use for that property. The law on it and your board policy, it's board policy 8775, reflects that if the board determines, and this would be, I think, after staff investigates it, that the board determines that the property is no longer suitable or needed for school purposes, then the board can declare that property as surplus. And then it first needs to be offered to the county commissioners for fair market value. If the county commissioners declines it, then the school district has a number of disposal methods available under the law, all sort of designed to achieve fair market value. One of the disposal measures that has been used with success with our firm in the past is to negotiate with the purchaser an amount, but that once that amount is set, then to advertise that amount and allow anybody else in the public to upset that amount, to bid higher. And then if that happens, it starts over again until there's finally no upset bid. But there are a number of other methods, including auctions and all kinds of other methods to dispose of a property. But again, it's got to be declared surplus, and it would need to be offered to the county, and then the board would select a disposal method. And at this point, staff does want to investigate whether there is a continued use or need by the school district now or in the future for that property. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to the board in case board members have any knowledge, feedback about this particular parcel and the request.
Dr. Halkiotis?
The historical record, that property was purchased many years ago by the former vocational director, Mabel Gordon. And they used Orange High School project house monies to pay for it. It wasn't purchased with any tax monies. The theory was eventually they were going to run out of lots to build homes with the carpentry construction classes at Orange High School. And for various and sundry reasons, the topography, the power lines, the decision was made once they abandoned stick-built homes. The last homes that were built were on Miller Road. I think there's a total of 50-something homes that were built back then. They went and were building 1,200 square foot homes on the campus of Orange High. They did that for several years. Then they got together with Habitat for Humanity, and with the assistance of Sports Endeavors over the years, they've been very successfully producing homes for Habitat. So that's the brief history on that whole thing. But if anything should be sold, and I think Rhonda Rath would know this, there is a separate account that's been put in place from other boards to show that the project house money is still out there, and it goes to the Orange High School construction classes. That's just a brief update. Thank you.
All right. Other questions or comments?
Will,
Matthew Roberts?
just what, so it sounds like this property does physically join Orange High campus.
No.
Is there a road or
does
something
not.
in between it?
It's significantly far away from Orange. It's actually off of Miller Road.
Okay, that's then I think it's something that we should take a look at. Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? I think what we had heard from you, Jonathan, and if Sarah Pitts or Dr. Felder, you can confirm, your recommendation to the board at this point is to allow an evaluation of that property and seeing how it fits into the district at this point.
That would be my recommendation, yes.
I concur, and it's something we should be able to bring back to the next board meeting.
Okay. So I'd recommend that we table this item till next meeting. Does any other comments from the boards or feeling on tabling it?
I support that.
You want to proceed by motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. I just want to make sure there was no concern. All right, can we get a motion to table till next meeting?
Motion to table.
Okay, so Hillary with the primary motion, and I think I heard Matthew Roberts with the secondary. Let's see. We'll start with Matthew Roberts.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Halkiotis.
Yes.
Sarah Smiley.
Yes.
Tony McKnight.
Yes.
Hillary McKenzie.
Yes.
Brenda Stevens.
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. Item is tabled for our next meeting. All right. Next item on our agenda is the school calendars 20 to 2021.
Good evening again, board members and Superintendent Dr. Felder. The purpose of this item is to share with you the proposed revised 2020-2021 school year traditional and year-round calendars. As you know, Governor Cooper signed Senate Bill 704 into law on May 4th. The act modifies the school calendar to address current and future concerns related to COVID-19. Senate Bill 704 states that each LEA must adopt a calendar with an opening date for students as of August 17, 2020. They must have a closing date for students by June 11, 2021. Also, there's 5 remote instructional days in the calendar and 5 additional instructional days that does not count in our hours. Also, please note that no remote instruction day should begin before August 24th of 2020, or if they're on a year-round calendar, it should not begin within the first remote day should not start within the first 6 days of the school calendar. Shortly after the law was signed into place, I met with Stephen Rawson from Tharrington and Smith to get a better understanding of the law and to begin creating drafts of calendars based on the law and what will be in the best interest of our students and families. After creating those drafts under his guidance, they were shared with cabinet, principals, assistant principals, and other district leadership for their feedback. To close the feedback loop, I met with the district calendar committee, which is made up of staff members from each school. They worked on the calendars and discussed the best options for our families. In terms of feedback, historically, the calendar committee will get feedback from families and staff members that are part of their school community. Unfortunately, because of timing and a desire to get calendars back out to our community in a timely manner, we did not get feedback from our families and staffs. In your abstract tonight, you have the proposed calendars for both our year-round and traditional school families. You also have a comparison document that compares the original calendars with the revised calendars. Because we did not have an opportunity to get feedback from our school community, we tried to hug to the original calendars as close as possible. But we also wanted to ensure that we were doing what was best for students and families. Please note, in the original calendar, the first teacher workday was August 17th. It is now August 12th. The first student day was August 24th, and now it's August 17th. Our November 3rd election day was a teacher work day. Now this year, our November 3rd election day will be a remote learning day, meaning students still will not be on campus. The winter break stayed intact, the same days of December 21st to January the 1st. Our Thanksgiving break also stayed intact, and spring break stayed intact. Our last day On the traditional calendar, on the original calendar was June 9th, and this upcoming year under the revised calendar will be June 7th. Some of the other highlights of the traditional calendar are as follow. On September 22nd is now a remote learning day, which is a new day on our families in which students will need to be at home. The teachers wanted this day on September 22nd because it will allow them to really follow up on any type of assessment data that we may have. February 26th is now a remote learning day, but it was a work day, so students were planning to be at home that day anyways. March 9th and April 20th are now remote days. These are other days that students will be at home, and the parents did not expect them to be at home on those days under the current calendar. Outside of the first 5 days of the school year, which was unavoidable because of the new law, we only added 3 days that students would be at home that families did not know about from the original calendar. Just as a side note about remote days, the remote days were placed where they're on the calendar so that there was a student day before the remote day. This will help us with students who do not have access at home. We also discussed as a calendar committee ending the first semester before the holiday break so high school students could take exams before going home for the break. After much discussion, we decided against bringing that forward because we were concerned with not knowing the needs of our students when they return. And we may need to spend the first couple of weeks taking care of students' social and emotional needs, and the instructional focus may not be as intense. Also, if we ended the first semester before the holiday break, there would have been 85 days in the semester. With that said, we have to keep in mind that the last 5 days of a semester for high school are their exams. So that will only leave us with 80 days of instruction before exams. Since the second semester of this school year was shortened because of COVID-19, we found it hard to justify giving our high school students a shortened semester starting the school year off. Now, in terms of the year-round calendar, there are a few differences in the revised year-round calendar versus the original calendar. The year-round breaks are essentially the same, and they still will have 15-day intersessions. The first teacher workday on the original calendar was July 9th. The first teacher workday on the revised calendar is July 10th. The first student day is the same. The biggest change that we saw in the calendar was around the November 3rd election day, which was a teacher workday. It is now a school day for the year-round calendar, but in talking with the year-round staff, meaning the principal, the AP, and a teacher, we were more than comfortable with doing so because Hillsborough Elementary is not a polling site. Are there any questions?
Ms. Sarah Smiley?
Mr. Johnson, I want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So the year-round school with this start date, did you say their first 5 days also cannot be remote instruction?
Yes.
I'm trying to understand, like, children going back to school at the beginning of July in a physical building. How does this work in terms of children going back to school in a physical building at the beginning of July? How are we thinking about that?
Well, we haven't really had those type of conversations. We was really tasked with coming up with a calendar. At some point, we will have to follow the direction of the state.
Yeah, if I could, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Great question, Mrs. Smiley. We are still awaiting guidance from the state on what the opening of school will look like. And so that's just where we find ourselves at this time. Because who knows, it's very possible that those days, although right now we're told cannot be remote days, they may have to be. We just don't know yet. But again, we were given guidance with regards to the calendar and drafted calendars based on the guidance we were provided.
And I know we're going to talk more about COVID response later and everything, but I know, Dr. Felder, you had mentioned that the state is going to provide us some options to choose from or something like that for reopen, like procedures for reopening, conditions under which reopening is okay. So this is literally about the dates, and the like, will they be physically in the building piece is a separate discussion.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions?
Question.
Go ahead, Dr. Halkiotis.
I'm just, I am thoroughly confused on this. It's like the North Carolina General Assembly and the Senate in particular have decided a medical issue. And this leads me to believe they think it's safe to put kids back in school according to their dictate. And then I'm assuming, I'm hearing the superintendent, who I trust without any problem at all, that they're still waiting for further guidance. And then the governor is out there, and somebody overruled him the other day and allowed this and that to happen. This is the greatest mishmash of misinformation I've ever seen in my life. So is the assumption being presented by the assembly that we're going to actually put children back in school in July, physically put kids back in the buildings? That's my question, Will.
So Dr. Felder, I think this goes along with what Ms. Smiley had asked earlier.
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that question. I can only tell you what we were charged. Every district in the state is in the same position.
Yeah.
We are charged with the General Assembly's decision around the calendar and drafting calendars that align with that guidance. We've done that. We've done it to the best of our ability, as Mr. Johnson said, hugging as closely to the original calendar that you all saw and approved. And we know that, I believe that the state is working really hard to give us the guidance with regards to opening of schools. We haven't received that yet. And when we do, we will govern ourselves accordingly.
Will?
Ms. Smiley, then we'll go to you, Matthew. Ms. Smiley?
Well, I appreciate the honing to the original calendars, especially since it was difficult to get additional feedback. I am curious what feedback you did get from the calendar committee. And in terms of I think for families, this is just, these things are going to go together, right? These dates are going to go with those answers. And a question I have as I look at this is, well, did we consider for Hillsborough, I don't know how the timing works, but removing one of the intersessions and moving it so it has a sort of later start date or sort of bigger changes? Did we consider that? And what feedback you got from the calendar committee?
So the main feedback I got from the calendar committee, they wanted that remote learning day in September, the September 22nd remote learning day. Originally, we had it placed at March 9th. So they thought it would benefit the kids as well as themselves a little bit more to be in September. A lot of the conversation that we had was wrapped around trying to finish up first semester before the holiday break. And we spent a lot of time debating the pros and cons on that. And then in terms of the year-round calendar, the trick with the year-round calendar was to try to ensure, and Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, under the law, we needed to have 45 days in, 15 days off, and throughout the entire calendar. And I believe, because I'm not looking at my notes right now, but I believe maybe 1 or 2 of our 9 weeks might be 46 days. So we got as close as we possibly could.
Thank you. I remember that was part of how they had defined it in the law, so that's helpful.
All right, Matthew Roberts.
Okay, Sarah, I appreciate your question because part of it was the intercession. So we don't have any legal choice to utilize the intercession so that we can have a start or late date.
Let me try to mention that. I mean, basically everything that Jason has said is spot on in trying to figure out how difficult it is to put these pieces to the puzzle together, given all the legal dictates. It's quite hard. One of the additional things that the General Assembly did was to create a definition of what a year-round school is. And that's the first time that is legislation that is now law. And that to meet, the year-round definition, and if you didn't, then you would, need to be starting school this year would have been, August 17th. But to meet that, for purposes, there's a few definitions, but the one that really would apply to Hillsborough here is a plan providing students be scheduled to attend 45 instructional days, followed by 15 days of vacation, repeated throughout the calendar year. So that's extremely challenging to meet, and in fact, in certain instances, it's impossible. But that is the definition. So there is not flexibility to your point in question, Mr. Roberts.
Okay, just one comment is that there's a lot of comments that we may have that some schools across the nation, instead of having all of the students come back at the beginning, that it's maybe a 50-50 mix so that we can maintain social distancing. I'm sure that we're looking at that.
The what ifs are endless. What I wanted to mention is the way the remote learning is set up. Is the idea is obviously that you wouldn't start school if things go well with the remote days, but then you would have remote days and a plan, a very detailed plan that needs to be submitted to the state in July about a remote, instruction plan. And then if there is a declared additional emergency where school is closed, so right now it's closed for the remainder of this school year, but if it's closed, say in July, then after 5 days of closure, then you would be able to then start doing additional remote days. So if there is a significant closure in next year, you would be able to pick up with additional remote instruction.
All right. Any other board comments or questions? All right, Sarah Smiley.
Just what are these blue blocks that say AVL? What does that stand for?
That's their annual vacation leave for teachers.
Okay. Yes. Okay. They looked like vacation dates, but that's helpful.
Move the superintendent's recommendation.
Okay, we have a primary motion from Dr. Halkiotis, the second from Ms. Smiley. Okay, we'll start with Matthew Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Halkiotis.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
Tony McKnight.
Yes.
Okay, Sarah Smiley.
Yes.
And Hillary McKenzie.
Aye.
Okay, and chair votes aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
All right. Next agenda item is to talk about the waivers for the 2019-2020 teacher makeup days.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. The purpose of this item is to request from you all to waive 2 staff makeup days for all certified and classified staff due to inclement weather for the end of the school year. With Senate Bills 704, students will now start school on August 17th, and our teacher's first teacher workday will be August 12th. Because of this new start date, teachers will automatically be left with 3 days to plan for the first day of school. Historically, our teachers have gotten 4 or 5 days to prepare for the opening of the school year. Teachers cannot start before August 12th because under the old calendar law, teachers must be out of school for 42 consecutive business days during the summer before they can start work again. During the 2020 school year, Orange County School staff missed 2 days due to inclement weather. Traditionally, staff will make those days up at the end of the school year. If teachers make up the 2 work days during June of 2020, then their official first work day for the 2020-2021 school year will have to be August 14th. This will only allow teachers 1 work day to get ready for the opening of the school year. We believe that this is not an adequate amount of time for teachers and schools to successfully open the school year. For classified staff that put in for leave during those days that we miss, we will ensure that we reimburse them of their leave or their missed pay. With that said, we are respectfully asking for a waiver for all employees of Orange County Schools.
All right, Jonathan, your hand's raised. Do you have a question or something to add before we go to discussion?
To Jason's point, it is the 42 days that's key to be able to get that in. So eliminating these 2 days would do that. I'm also of the opinion that the COVID-19 legislation that the General Assembly passed, what it stated was that if the district did remote learning during this school year, and there's a very broad definition, then you would have essentially be able to waive the dictates of the calendar law, which includes the certain number of days and hours and so on and so forth. And so I believe that you're authorized to do this based on the COVID-19 legislation as well. So that's it.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. If you can lower your hand. All right, any questions or comments from any board members? All right, this is an action item. Can I get a motion?
Motion
To approve.
All right, I'll heard Hillary McKenzie as a primary motion. Do we have a secondary?
Second.
Okay, that was Tony McKnight. Okay, with that, we'll start with Sarah Smiley.
Oh, aye.
Okay, Brenda Stevens.
Aye.
Dr. Alkiotis.
Yes.
Okay, Tony McKnight.
Aye.
Hillary McKenzie.
Aye.
Matthew Roberts.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That motion carries. All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you all.
All right, next is we're moving into our information only part of our agenda. With that, we first item on the agenda is the Career and Technical Education local application.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Do you see it?
Not yet.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh,
Starting.
you see it now?
Yes, we can see it.
Yay. Very good. Tonight, I am honored and privileged to be here as the Orange County Schools Career and Technical Education Director. I've been in this position since January of 2019. And tonight, I'm pleased to represent and advocate for all the career and technical education staff and students of Orange County Schools. CTE programs are provided in our 1 alternative school, our 2 high schools, and our 3 middle schools. We offer all 8 current state program areas with 37 teachers and 2 support staff. Career Technical Education operates under the federal guidelines of the Carl D. Perkins Act. Perkins 5 is the new legislation that began this school year. This screen is an illustration of Orange County Schools Career and Technical Education's why. Why do we do what we do? And it's for students. Students building skills and knowledge. That's our why. Orange County Schools Career and Technical Education's main focus is in quality teachers providing engaging opportunities for students. Opportunities in the classroom, in lab settings, through community service, and through career technical student organizations. This local application for federal and state funding, once approved by you, the Orange County Schools Board of Education members, will become an agreement between you and the State Board of Education. The annual application is a necessary part of the State Board of Education's accountability to the General Assembly of North Carolina and to the United States Department of Education. The assurances that I have provided for you tonight in the link is a signal of local education agencies' capacity to carry out the state and federal legal requirements and the policies during the time frame of this local plan. Under Perkins 4, this local plan was required every year. Under Perkins 5, this plan will be approved every 2 years. Much of my year this year has been on facilitating a comprehensive local needs assessment. In January of 2019, when I took this job, this board had formed a CTE ad hoc committee. The results of that committee's work are included in this comprehensive local needs assessment. Melinda Fornes, the CTE Curriculum and Instructional Management Coordinator, and both career development coordinators, Nick Montgomery at Orange and Stephanie Smith at Cedar Ridge, and I have worked through all 6 of these components of the needs assessment. We have facilitated surveys and open-ended question-answer sessions to gather data. I have participated in 4 two-day sessions with CTE directors across the state on components of a high-quality CTE program that I then used in this needs assessment. Almost all of the business advisory members attended and participated in a roundtable session at the fall business advisory meeting at UNC Hillsborough Hospital. Some of those board members I had individual conversations with that were unable to attend. The CTE leadership team, consisting of teachers from all program areas and from all middle and high schools, dove into all this data and created a list of what Orange County Schools Career and Technical Education is doing well and identified some needs. In the local application narratives that you have for you tonight in parts 1 and 3, the strategies included are a result of that needs assessment. Perkins 5 has 6 required uses of funds, and Orange County Schools Career and Technical Education has planned for and meets all 6 requirements. Career exploration and career development is provided through a systematic framework. Professional development is provided in face-to-face sessions throughout the school year. And thanks to COVID-19, we will now be moving to more online PD that will provide just-in-time PD as teachers need it. Coursework is provided from state curriculum, local course options, and third-party vendors, allowing teachers to lead students through learning skills needed to gain occupations in high-skill, high-wage, or in-demand industries. All CTE courses provide the opportunity for students to put academic skills into relevant career application. Orange County Schools provides courses and course pathways in every state program area, and we have been in an in-depth evaluation of our program thanks to the Orange County Schools Board of Education Ad Hoc Committee review and through this year's local needs assessment. When this plan is approved by you and by North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, Orange County Schools will receive 3 funding sources. In 2021, we have a plan and allotment of 383 months of employment that will provide employment for the CTE staff. Total dollars in state and federal has been around $200,000. If you will note, both state and MOEs are planning allotments that were given on April 2nd of 2020. And at this point, we have still not received the federal planning allotment. Orange County Schools schools served 2,909 students in grades 6 through 12 during this 2019-2020 school year. There are 8 performance indicators used to evaluate program quality in career and technical education. 1S3, that's 2S3, academic proficiency in science, is a new performance indicator for Perkins 5. 5S1, program quality, attained recognized post-secondary credential, is also new. And under Perkins 4, we have technical skill attainment. In Perkins 5, that is 5S4, program quality other. This is the measure of our proficiency on state assessments. The next 16 slides are set up exactly the same. For each of those 8 performance indicators on the previous slide, you will see a slide that has a description and a data box. If you will note in the local application system PDF file that I have provided for you tonight, there is no data populated from North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. So each CTE director was sent preliminary data. The state ran previous year's data under Perkins 5 guidelines. At this time, preliminary data is all we have. I've included the preliminary data here on this slide, and it's also included in the narrative section of the local application system for your review. For subgroup data, I have referred to historical data for Orange County schools in these categories to include improvement strategies. Please note, once this data is populated in the local application system, I will ask to come back to the board and provide you an update with a PDF file with the CTE local application. After each performance indicator, I've included a strategy slide. This is simply a highlight of a few strategies to meet this performance indicator. In the local application, you will see the details of the who, what, when, how, and why of each strategy. Performance indicator 2 is on reading language arts. Please note, Orange County Schools exceeds the state percentage in this preliminary data. Performance indicator 3 is on mathematics. We exceed state percentage. For both reading and math performance indicators, we need to focus on literacy and vocabulary for academic attainment. Performance indicator 4 is the new performance indicator for science. Preliminary data shows that Orange County Schools exceeds the state percentage. For academic attainment in science, again, vocabulary is going to be key. Melinda Fornes has already reached out to high school biology teachers to obtain strategies and processes to help us focus on root words, prefixes, and suffixes so we can incorporate that into our CTE coursework. Performance indicator 5 is on post-secondary placement, and we meet the state percentage. For post-high school student contact, it is vital that we have information in order to meet demographic information in order to be able to meet this measure. Performance indicator 6 is on non-traditional program enrollment. Orange County Schools at this time does not meet the state percentage. So one of the strategies for meeting this percentage is that we will begin to focus on students that are non-traditional in a level 1 course. We will encourage, support, and provide scaffolding to help that student continue into level 2 courses. That's the concentrator course, and that is where the student will count in this measure. Performance indicator 7 is a new performance indicator on measuring post-secondary credentials. Note that we are very low in Orange County Schools. However, on April 25th, I received a report from DPI that outlined Orange County Schools' credential report for seniors. There were 219 current seniors that earned a credential during their 4 years of high school. These 219 seniors earned a total of 755 credentials within their 4 years of high school. Now that sounds kind of crazy, 219 high schoolers earning 755 credentials. But let me explain that in public safety, students can earn up to 4 different NIM certification. And in our construction core class, students can earn up to 9 credentials in NCCER. For this indicator, we're going to make sure that we educate our CTE staff on aligned credentials that will be key to meeting this performance indicator, and we'll also look to balance the cost of these industry credentials in our budget. Performance indicator 8 is a performance indicator that we've had. It's newly titled Program Quality Other, was our technical skills attainment, and we slightly exceed the state percentage. Again, literacy, vocabulary, also focusing on midterm assessments and data analysis are very important to increase proficiency rates in our CTE classes. In the local application narrative, part 3, there are 6 prompts. These 6 prompts are on your screen. And in the PDF file that I provided, there is detailed information for each of these 6 prompts. Tonight, I just wanted to highlight just a couple. This one is question 3 on special populations. Our CTE staff have had an increased, purposeful, and close working relation with special population staff, including EC and EL, as well as core coaches to ensure that each and every CTE student has an opportunity for success. Melinda formed plan years ago working with small groups. Now she's working one-on-one with CTE teachers to assist them in modifying blueprints, writing EL goals, and modifying indicator assessments for our EC students. She is also working with our special populations partners, gathering strategies to incorporate in our CTE classrooms to provide the scaffolding needed to ensure each student has an opportunity to succeed. A big push, and will continue to be a big push, is more work-based learning opportunities. I'll be coming to this board in the very near future with plans to join our business advisory with Chapel Hill Carball Schools Business Advisory. And that is to ensure that both Orange County school systems have business and industry partners at the table that provide the strongest CTE programs and work-based learning opportunities for our students. CTE has been very successful with an online literacy program. The success is in part due to very specific professional development, and we will continue with this specific coaching cycle with our CTE staff. And as your CTE director for Orange County Schools, I will continue to focus on these 4 pillars set forth by to you in January of 2019: a strong CTE leadership, quality program, strong teachers in the classroom, and quality tools and data measures. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you tonight. I wished I could see each of you face to face. I ask you to please review the local application PDF files closely because I need your vote. I'll bring this back to you on June the 8th for a vote on the local application. And once you approve that, we will then submit it to DPI for final approval. Please note that career and technical education are programs that work for students, and it's learning that works for all students in Orange County schools. Thank you for letting me present. Do you have any questions for me tonight?
All right, Sarah Smiley.
Ms. Braxton, thank you for your presentation and for all of the needs assessment that you and the team have been doing this year. And thank you for your statement about, you said that you have a commitment to success for each and every CTE child. And so I appreciate, or student, or maybe they wouldn't like being called children, those high schoolers, but A couple of comments and then a question. One of the things that I think is so interesting in here is how it asks us to understand what people are doing post-secondary, which is something that I've brought up as a board member a few times, just real interest in understanding what our students are doing after high school, whether that's college, career, military, any of those pathways. And so just really, I know that that's something that you will be looking at measuring more in the, at least if I was understanding it correctly, what actually people, our CTE concentrators do go on to do. And just wanted to note, I think there's an opportunity there to learn from that for the system as a whole, actually, in terms of what our students are going on to do. I'm so excited to see that. I want to thank you for coming back with the subgroup data, because that was a question when I saw the PDF here about where that was. I think that's really important to for the board to see and understand. And then in terms of particular subgroups, I know that there's a lot here about partnering for English language learners and partnering for exceptional children with sort of specialists in those areas. If I'm remembering correctly, historically, we also have some real gaps for Black students in, especially I think there were some gaps in like math and maybe some of the literacy measures previously. And so I guess I have a question there about whether there are any particular, I just wanted to note that and say, you know, I think that that's important also, and see if there are ways that that's infused in the plan as well.
Thank you. I've made note of all of those. The post-secondary surveys are done the spring following graduation, and that has historically been done. It will continue to be done. We will pay very close attention to subgroup data when that comes. One, we don't have the subgroup data because it's new legislation, although we thought we would have it. And then COVID-19 happened, and things just seem to be not happening as quickly, and then no testing with the spring session. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, but I do plan to share that with you when I get it. And then we will look very closely at that subgroup data.
Thank you.
All right, other board comments? Questions? So I just want to say, Ms. Braxton, thank you for all your leadership since you've stepped in the position. You've definitely significantly changed the organization. I know that everybody in your organization of CTE is committed to every student. It's fantastic to see the work they're doing, and we appreciate it. The two questions I had was on when you were talking about the concentrators for 3S1, and you were saying the numbers weren't exactly where you expected them. Are those because students are trying different areas versus staying in the same focused area, or what we're defining as concentrators? I know we've discussed this before. I'm just curious if you've learned any insight from that.
So there's a little bit of twofold. So the survey is post-secondary. So yes, they're trying different things, but what we're just looking at there is, are they not staying at home, right? So that's where that one, are they either in school, or are they working, or are they in the military? And now with Perkins 5, they could even be in like the Peace Corps. So there's some other measures. The other part with the concentrators, the indicators 1 through 8, a lot of those are based on concentrators. And the only way they can count as a concentrator is if they take that second level and become a concentrator. And it is totally okay. You and I have had this conversation before, especially in that CTE ad hoc committee. It is perfectly okay for kids not to take that second level and to take a level 1 here and a level 1 here and a level 1 here. That's where they're figuring out what they like. And that's okay that they don't go to the second level. When they go to that second level and become a concentrator, that's when they start counting in those performance indicators of academic attainment. And in the 3S1, that's when we will follow up with them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about learning life skills. So definitely excellent. The second question I had is, on the needs assessment, when you were going through that, was the Business Advisory Council a big part of that, or how did they fit in? Just to give us a view of, as you're going through this and as you're talking and looking at the data, is this shared with the Business Advisory Council, or how does this all fit together?
So perfect. So with the comprehensive local needs assessment, there were units, and business advisory was in two. They were in the labor market alignment. That was pretty much all business advisory. And then in part 3, with size, scope, and quality, there was a section in there called partnership. And so they were very instrumental in that. In the session that I did with the business advisory in the fall, we did roundtable sessions. So I took the prompt questions that were provided in the local needs assessment, and I had the business advisory sit in roundtables, and they discussed it in small groups, and then they passed the questions around. And then those members that were not able to attend, I went and had one-on-one meetings with them and went through those questions and had conversations, usually an hour conversation with each one of them. What was supposed to have happened in March before we were put to remote learning was a follow-up with business advisory to share with them that data one-on-one. And then one of the other parts that is really needed in this comprehensive local needs assessment is a tour of our facility, and have business to actually tour the classrooms and to look at the equipment. And that was something that did not get to happen, and it will happen as soon as buildings are open again and we can safely bring business and industry in. It's important for them to get their eyes on our equipment and our space to say, thumbs up, that's awesome, or maybe we can help you, or just to give us that feedback. So this comprehensive local needs assessment, I felt like went really, really well with the business advisory and getting their feedback. There's pieces to that need to continue. This is not a one and done, and we need to circle back to that. And although this is only a every 2-year process now, it's something that needs to happen on a continuous basis so that it's not this big, massive project, but it's an ongoing process.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any other comments from the board? I don't see any hands up. Thank you, Ms. Braxton, for your time. All right, Dr. Felder, next on the agenda, we have the COVID update, and I do believe part of that will be a graduation update as well.
Absolutely, Mr. Atherton. So again, good evening, everyone. I'd like to kick off my updates with a huge congratulations to our very own Mr. Josh Sabanovic. He is the Director of Bands at Cedar Ridge High School. He was awarded the 2020 Band Director of the Year Award by the North Carolina's Central District Band Masters Association. So please join me in congratulating him on winning this prestigious award in honor of his expertise and his tireless commitment and passion for students. We are all so very proud of him on this outstanding achievement. So congratulations. With regards to action plans, well, I can tell you that they are well underway using the drive-in option per NCDPI. And with great stakeholder engagement and involvement in planning the details and the logistics. So the latest update that I have is that each ceremony's location has been identified. Partnership will graduate 10 students on Thursday, June 11th at the Orange County Speedway. Students actually vote in each of the schools, I understand. Orange High School will graduate approximately 256 students on Friday, June 12th at Orange High School. Cedar Ridge High School will graduate 318 students on Saturday, June 13th at Cedar Ridge High School. Well, I hope everyone has a blue light bulb. If not, I suggest you run out real quick to Walmart or wherever you would go to get one. And you may be asking, well, what do I need a blue light bulb for? Well, I'm going to tell you. We want to light up the town. We want to paint the town blue here in Hillsborough. That would be light up our porches, our windows, our front doors, wherever you have an external light, we want it to be blue on the 11th, 12th, and 13th. Again, those are the graduation days in honor of and in support of our 585 graduating seniors. So those blue light bulbs. And so that concludes the graduation plan updates to date. Again, the logistics and details are being worked out, and I will continue to provide the board with updates as plans unfold and are finalized. My next update is with regards to the next school year, and we delved into it a bit, the calendar. And so, you know, while there are still many unknowns, we are certainly still awaiting guidance on the reopening of schools from the state. There are some things that we do know and are in a great position to take a proactive stance versus a reactive one. One of the things we know is that the district's focus areas for next year are not going to change. So equity remains a very critical and constant thread throughout everything we do as a district. And we will continue our focus next year to be on literacy, culture, climate, which shows up as social emotional learning for our students, and community engagement. So those three focus areas undergirded by equity will continue to be our focus next year. We also know from NCDPI, while we are awaiting guidance on what the reopening of schools will look like, we were informed that we should be planning for remote learning or a hybrid model. So that would be remote learning and in-person instruction, as that may be needed for a period of time next school year. So as a result, the district will be ramping up its remote learning to provide both synchronous and asynchronous learning to blended curriculum that works seamlessly in both a remote and in-person learning environments. And to ensure that we are closing the digital divide by providing devices for our K-2 students and more Wi-Fi access. And you'll hear more about each of these in the COVID-19 update that will follow my comments here. We'll seek stakeholder community feedback to inform our plans, including the remote learning plan that's due to the state in July. So at this time, I would like to provide an update, staff will provide an update on our 4 COVID-19 priorities that we continue to maintain a laser-like focus on. However, at the May 4th board meeting, we did provide an update on safety and food, and we continue to do that through the board weekly update. And we also provided on May 4th update. We got through part of the learning area. So tonight we will finish that update by focusing on learning and providing an update on the 4th priority area of COVID-19 for the district, and that is wholeness and wellness. So if there are no questions, I will turn the floor over to Dr. Dina Keeling, who will provide an update under the learning area by providing an update on closing the gap and accelerating learning subcommittees as part of our learning focus.
Good evening, everyone. So we are progressing with our Closing the Gap and Accelerating Learning team. We have divided into 5 subcommittees. The first committee is remote learning. Then we have school reentry, technology, human capital, and communication and engagement. And we're going to give you a little bit of information about each of these committees. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Gammon, who will speak to us about remote learning. He is the chair of this committee.
Thank you, Dr. Keeling. Good evening, everyone. Recently, the original iteration of the remote learning team completed the 4th round of choice boards. They were posted this past Friday for students and families. As we progress into the next phase of this work, we've identified a new cross-representative group of OCS staff members to carry on the next phase of remote learning work. This team includes district leaders, members of the C&I team, building level administrators, teachers, and coaches. Moving forward, this team will continue to evolve to include parents and students as part of the decision-making process as well. In the coming days, our team is eager to craft our vision and mission for this work and to develop actionable goals for each focus area with regular check-ins. And so as Dr. Felder noted, our areas of focus remain the same. Under the umbrella of equity, we are doubling down on literacy, social emotional learning, and community engagement. Our remote learning subcommittee is tasked with devising a compelling why and really reimagining what school can look like for our students moving forward. As Dr. Felder noted, at this time, we could be facing total remote learning this coming school year. We could be facing traditional face-to-face learning with social distancing and other safety precautions, or it could be a hybrid of both. While we are continuing to function in uncharted territory, research compels us to keep it simple amid these very complex times. And so to that end, the remote learning team is working diligently really in 3 kind of buckets, focusing on curriculum. What are we going to teach, and what are those essential power concepts that we're going to focus on? How are we going to teach in a blended environment, including the learning management system that we will use, the necessary training for students, staff, families, caregivers, and the professional development needed and support needed for teachers, students, and families to access and successfully navigate all of our learning resources. And then finally, kind of a third bucket is authentic literacy across the curriculum, and that's really integral to both what and how we teach. So in order for us to meet this need, our remote learning subcommittee is investigating a collection of blended curriculum resources to determine their capacity to meet the needs of all learners and to best support the needs of our staff through any of the previously mentioned scenarios for school that we may face in the fall. We also recognize that in order to know where we are going, we need to pause and continue gathering data on where we are. At our last board meeting, I shared some initial survey data compiled from teachers across the district. What did we learn from our initial remote learning experience? What worked? What didn't work? What needs improvement? Those are questions that we are going to be digging into as a remote learning team. To that end, our remote learning team is crafting a survey for families and staff to recap what we've done previously. And we are participating in random calling of students and families across OCS to gather feedback around their experiences to date to help inform our work. And lastly, all of these critical decisions will be made amidst a potential budget shortfall. Thus, this team will work closely with other subcommittees noted by Dr. Keeling, our technology subcommittee, school reentry, human capital, and communication engagement to ensure that we are directing our resources appropriately and effectively towards students with the greatest needs, that we will be leveraging all of the opportunities available to us and existing funds, and potentially repurposing positions to creatively meet our remote learning needs. And so to guide our work, the remote learning team is connecting with district leaders in other North Carolina school systems, as well as becoming immersed in the most up-to-date research and lessons from the field. For example, a recently released recovery plan from the state of Maryland encompasses a wealth of guidance and information centered around many of the same questions that are driving our work. At this time, I will turn it back over to Dr. Keeling to provide additional information about closing gaps and accelerating learning, and then we can take questions around learning at the end of her segment. So Dr. Keeling.
Thank you, Dr. Gammon. So as you can tell by the amount of information that Dr. Gammon just shared, the work of these subcommittees is massive. We are looking at different scenarios because, as Dr. Felder said, we don't have all the answers of when we will hit the door, and we just want to make sure that we have thought of everything so that it is smooth for students and staff. So our second subcommittee is school reentry, and this subcommittee is broken into two teams. One team is focused on learning and school logistics. So that is everything that it's going to take when those students and staff hit the door, whatever that day is. We want to have everything in place. We want to make sure that we have the right schedules, that we have the right teachers in the right places. We have to think about just the entire setup of how the day will go, our curriculum as an extension from remote learning. As Dr. Gammon and Dr. Felder said, we have to have a platform that is a seamless transition between the brick and mortar as well as in remote learning. So making sure that staff have all the PD that they need to take that same platform and be able to utilize it in the brick and mortar school as well. The other side of school reentry is operations and safety. We want to make sure that students and staff feel safe when they hit that door. I know that's going to be like a main concern for everyone. And so this committee is looking at everything that it's going to take to make sure that that happens, from the amount of personal protective equipment that we're going to need, to how do we run buses, to utilizing whatever requirements come down from the state and from the health department in terms of social distancing. So how do we run food? How many students can fit in a classroom? How many buses will we need to run? All of these different logistics as it relates to operations and safety. This committee will be working and looking at that. The next subcommittee is technology. They will be making sure every student has a device, every student has access. They will also look at accessibility. When we think about our students with disabilities, we want to make sure that they have the assistive technologies that they need. We think about our emergent bilingual students. If my parent doesn't speak English, but they open up this device, is this in language that they understand so that they can even help me with this work? So technology will be looking into all of that. And then, as we've said, the state is requiring us to have a remote learning plan. And of course, within that plan, there are components that relate to technology. And so the technology committee will be working closely with the remote learning team to make sure that those parts of the remote learning plan are addressed. The next subcommittee is human capital. When we start thinking about all of the transitions that are going to be taking place, this whole new way of doing education, there's going to be a lot of different staffing and personnel and policy questions and legality questions that come up. And so the Human Capital Subcommittee will be working closely with our attorneys to make sure that all of these policies are identified, that we may need to make adjustments to policies that we have, that we may need to create new policies. We think about staff, and what if a staff person doesn't feel comfortable coming back to work? What do we do in that case? How do we protect our staff who may be at high risk? So all of these different type of questions, the Human Capital Committee will be addressing and looking at. And then our final committee is communication and engagement. And this subcommittee will put together a comprehensive communication plan. Again, as I said, we want to make sure that everyone knows not only what we're doing, but that we are trying to think of every possible scenario. I know that staff members are probably sitting at home and asking themselves, what are they going to do about this? And what are they going to do about that? And so it's important for us to make sure that at the district level, we are communicating. At the school level, we're communicating with our families. And then a piece that is really becoming vital is community partnerships and stakeholders and stakeholder engagement, for us to be able to get the information to our stakeholders and community, but also to get feedback from them. We cannot build these plans that these subcommittees will be building without stakeholder engagement, as Dr. Gammon said. And then just partnering with the community. We may have to have members of the health department in schools doing temperature checks. So we have to have all the partnerships in place. The communication subcommittee will look at that. And then finally, the communication among all of our groups. There's some overlap between the subcommittees. So we want to make sure that all of the subcommittees are communicating with each other. in addition to the work that's being done within the subcommittee, making sure, again, that that's being pushed out to our families and to our staff as well. So those are all of our subcommittees. I'll pause before I turn it over to, I think Mr. Jones is next, but do you have any questions for Dr. Gammon or I? Or I'm not sure if we're waiting to the end for that. Dr. Felder, you direct me on that.
So board, if you wouldn't mind, we would like to get through the entire presentation before taking questions, but if you have any burning ones, we certainly can address them as we go along.
I don't have a burning question, Dr. Felder, but just a clarity. We are still planning on having a not specific on this, but a traditional graduation along with the drive-in graduation, correct?
Absolutely, yes. So the update that I provided was the one that we are working on at the moment, and that is the June graduation. And as soon as we get clarity and more guidance, absolutely, there will be a more traditional graduation.
Okay.
You have my word on.
Okay, Dr. Felder, I'm not questioning, I just wanted clarity.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
Okay. So I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Jones.
Good evening, board, and I wanted to give you an update on where we are in IT and how we're supporting all of these massive changes and making sure that students and staff have what they need. So we did a recent audit, and over 97% of enrolled 3 through 12 have Chromebooks checked out, and we're providing information back to the schools. We've provided them audit reports on what students that are currently enrolled do not have Chromebooks. Some of those may be EC students. Some of those may have transferred out of the district, but we're giving those that data to the schools so they can kind of look and see if there are any gaps. If so, they'll work with us to make sure we get technology available to those students as soon as possible. So allocations to date, this is using our swap service. Most of these are repairs, but some of them are providing equipment to students that didn't have them for one reason or another. 65 Chromebooks, 18 staff laptops, 45 hotspots to date, and 6 chargers. And scheduled, this data is about 4 days old. Scheduled, we have 23 hotspots, 4 Chromebooks, and 19 phones ready to hand out. I should mention, I know that hotspots are a big priority for us as they are for the district. So we've gotten 500, and we're charged for those as they're activated. So with the schools are submitting information on students and in some case staff who require the hotspots. As soon as we get that data, we're reaching out to the families that day that it's submitted and scheduling for a pickup. So we're turning that stuff around as soon as we're getting requests. So, because I know that's a really big priority, not just in general, but it's something that IT really wants to do to make sure we've got these students connected. And of course, the personal hotspots, when they're powered up, they give the students 24/7 access to the internet, which we think is really important. So to date, from the hardware we've ordered to make sure we have enough to carry us through, we've received 45 staff laptops, the 500 hotspots I mentioned, 50 chargers, and 150 Chromebooks. New hardware to receive shortly. I just got word that the 500 Chromebooks were delivered today, so we need to go and configure those and get those in the environment. And then 50 staff on the way, which should hold us for quite a while. We're doing a lot of research. We're looking at Wi-Fi in the secondary schools parking lots. We've got some pricing on that to look at. That would essentially be affixing weatherproofed access points on the exterior positions of buildings that are adjacent to the parking lot so that folks will be able to have some access to Wi-Fi who may not be good candidates for the personal hotspot solution. K2 devices, we've done some research. We've identified what we think is the best and most cost-effective solution of repurposing and maybe augmenting some of the iPads that we already have in the K2 classroom for the kindergartners, and then using Chromebooks for the first and second graders. That would keep them in line with the 3rd through 12th graders. We're also researching bus hotspots. We've got some trials that are running right now that are going out to certain areas in the community. We've made that available through social media and on the website. And we're encouraging the principals to let folks know when the hotspot, the buses are going to be in geographic areas that correspond to the zoning districts for those schools. We've got a digital signature solution that we're rolling out. And we've been in consultation with the schools, and we feel like it's best for the students if they keep their Chromebooks over the summer so that they'll have them throughout the summer for learning opportunities. We will, of course, be collecting the graduating seniors' Chromebooks so that we'll have those for repurposing to the 3rd graders. We're looking at our device refresh. We've worked with CNI, finance, teachers, administrators, the attorney's office to complete a refresh plan. As I mentioned, we're looking at repurposed iPads for the kindergarten and then 2-in-1 Chromebooks for grades 1 through 12. These are essentially Chromebooks that can be opened into a laptop, or you can keep opening them and then they serve as a tablet. So they've got a lot of versatility. They can be used as a tablet or a traditional Chromebook laptop. That's why we thought that could be quite suitable for the 1st and 2nd graders. They would still have that touch interface, the tactile approach. That gives us a lot of flexibility. And we're looking at 2-in-1 Windows laptops for staff as part of the refresh plan. This is after a lot of research we did, and we did a lot of presentations to staffs of schools and to the digital learning coaches. We got most of the schools covered before the quarantine hit, so there were still a few that weren't able to see these themselves, but feedback has all been very good for these 2-in-1 Chromebooks for the students and 2-in-1 Windows laptops for the staff. Also, we're looking at a full replacement for the staff. The teacher laptops are 4 years old and they're showing a lot of signs of wear. The other staff equipment is much older, and by going with this 2-in-1 device, it's really going to help staff that traditionally have been assigned desktops so that they can be not just more mobile, but with remote support, they'll have that technology that they need. So as soon as we finalize the RFP with the attorney's office, we're going to be putting that out for bid, and then we will be bringing a request for approval to the board in June. Also wanted to mention that we are working on the instructional technology strategic. Assembled the team. It cuts across CNI and IT, and we're moving forward on putting that document together. Of course, it's going to have a strong component of remote learning to make sure we're covering not just traditional instructional technology, but how that is adapted to make sure we can work in a remote learning or a hybrid environment. So if I think Dr. Felder, you wanted to hold questions to the end. If so, I will turn it over to Mr. Jason Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. The COVID-19 call center has received 141 calls as of May 13th. We've had 96 calls come into the English line and 45 into the Spanish line. The goal of the call center is to answer our families' questions in a timely manner and is another way for the district to stay engaged with our families. As you can see, the majority of our phone calls have been related to one choice board questions with a total of 59 calls. Families have mainly been calling about location of choice boards, They are asking for us to mail the choice boards, and they have been asking for the date that choice boards will be released. We have gotten 24 calls about food pickup and resources. These calls have mainly been around for food pickup. The COVID call center has also received 22 technology calls. A majority of those calls have been around computers not being operational. The call center works closely with the IT department to get this information to them and to get the computer problems rectified as soon as possible. Todd, you can go to the next slide, please. At the last board meeting, Dr. Gammon discussed the academic contact data that we had. The data that we're about to mention are from the efforts of teachers, social workers, counselors, administrators, and all school staff to ensure that we've reached every student at least once. As of May 15th, we're down to 25 students that we're not able to get in contact with, which equates to 0.33%. Ms. Sharita Cobb is going to present to you non-academic contacts with students and families. In particular, she will be looking at food requests, social emotional learning, mental health, and other requests that families are making. Ms. Cobb, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Todd, if you could go back and click on that social worker contact, please. So on the graph that you would be seeing now shows the total number of contacts that the social workers have had. Please note that we tried to pull out individual contacts. So these numbers are actually high, but we wanted you to know that at each of the schools, the social workers are making contacts. So that 2,769 parent-student contacts, that number is really double that. What they did was, if I made contact with the family one time, I'm just gonna put that number in. But our social workers are surely making contacts with families. We've had 1,499 contacts in reference to food. There have been at least 124 contacts in reference to social emotional learning and mental health supports. And there have been 363 contacts around either graduation regalia, laptop information, requests around how can they get support from DSS, requests around what they need to do about DJJ. And then our school-based mental health therapists have done at the minimum 176 check-ins with our students and families. Our social workers continue to do these check-ins with these families. But again, these numbers are the raw one-time numbers because if we ask them to list, because most of them have had multiple contacts with the same families. So these numbers are very, very raw, and this is what they have been able to do as far as connecting with families. We have been in contact with our social workers of late to talk about the PEBT that has just been approved. And so we have created a letter that is going to go out on social media starting tomorrow around noon, and then we will have a Connect Ed that will go out Wednesday afternoon, just explaining what that is and making sure that our parents know. Our social workers are on alert, so those families who are not already signed up to receive benefits, but their students do receive a reduced lunch, they will know what steps they need to take. And also, if there is a family that their student is not signed up for free or reduced lunch, they never completed an application, the social workers will be working with them to help them get that paperwork completed so that they can then apply for the PEBT or be eligible for that. That is all that I have. And so now I will be turning it over to Dr. Felder.
So thank you, Ms. Cobb. So this next section is to provide an update with regards to guidance we received, all districts received with regards to grading. So just some highlights to provide just an overview, and then we'll talk about what grading is going to look like per the state's guidance at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. First and foremost, we want to hold students harmless, and so no student, I repeat, no student will receive a failing grade. No student will be penalized by having their grade lowered. Our seniors will receive a pass or withdrawal grades. At the elementary and middle school level, students are not receiving traditional grades this year per the guidance. At elementary, they will be provided with a narrative, and that narrative feedback will reflect the full academic year. Our middle school students will also receive written feedback, but that feedback will reflect the end of the year, and both in terms of their academic achievement and where there are areas of improvement, as well as SEL, social emotional feedback. And our high school students, students in grades 9 to 11 can choose between a grade of pass or no credit, or a numeric grade for their spring semester courses this year. So that's the general highlights. If you click on, Todd, you don't need to do it, Mr. Jones, but board members, the title, if you click there, you will get the grading guidance, have access to the grading guidance from the state. So with that, I'm going to turn things back to Ms. Cobb, and she's going to walk you through the elementary grading guidance, give you a little bit more detail.
So the elementary team has been meeting and discussing how we will move forward with the K through 5 grading. Again, as Dr. Felder said, those students will not receive a failing grade, and no student will receive a final grade. Teachers will be providing a year-end written feedback for students and families based on their learning throughout this academic year through March, and we will be looking at those power standards. And then academic and social emotional feedback will also be used to help transition students into the new school year. So the team worked together to develop a feedback form that teachers will fill out, and that feedback form will give parents information about where the student was doing, where they stand, and it will also include social emotional information. As a part of that form, we will also add an opportunity for parents and staff to request conferencing to discuss with parents what needs to happen next with students, as well as we will also be talking with parents about summer learning that could occur and what that would look like for students. I will now turn it over to Dr. Gammon.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. For middle school students, grades 6 through 8 students will receive a final course grade of a PC 19 or a WC 19. In Orange County schools, we have decided, as Dr. Felder mentioned before, that all students will receive the PC 19, as we will not be holding students, we will hold students harmless. We will not be penalizing students at this time. The WC-19 does not mean that the student failed the course and does not imply the grade retention for middle school students. However, we are going to be giving the PC-19 for all students. As Ms. Cobb noted, teachers will provide year-end written feedback for students based on their learning this school year, and they will be focusing not only on the academic side, but also social emotional feedback, as well as guiding information that will help students to transition into the next grade level and content areas for the 2020-21 school year. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Johnson with an update with high school.
Thank you, Dr. Gammon. Students in grades 9 through 11 and non-graduating seniors will choose from 2 options how each final course grade will appear on their transcript for their courses. If students cannot be reached to make a choice, they will be permitted to do so after school buildings reopen. Option 1, students and families could decide to receive a numeric grade, their highest grade representing either their learning as of March 13th or as improved through the semester as remote learning continued. Students will have up to May 22nd to improve their grades. This is a soft deadline because students who do not have access or having struggles with life situations will be given over the summer and into the fall semester to improve their grades. Students will receive course credit, and the numeric grade and quality points for each course will be used to calculate GPA. For option 2, Students can choose from pass COVID-19, PC-19, or withdraw COVID-19, WC-19. We are highly discouraging our families and students in taking a WC-19 because they would not get credit. We also recognize there may be a valid reason that a student and their family will want a WC-19. But with that said, if a student decides they want a WC-19, it must be approved by the principal. And I just want to reiterate what Dr. Felder said earlier. As a team, we have decided that no students will fail the course. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa Cunningham Brown.
Good evening, everybody. The last segment is regarding wholeness and wellness. I'd like to report that the State Board of Education extended the state of emergency leave until May 31st for our employees, and this is a great news. We're anticipating that they may extend it even further into June. That will certainly help our workers in keeping them whole and holding them harmless with regards to their paychecks and benefits. The last segment for this evening, I'd like to introduce to you Connie Crimmins, who will talk with you about workshops that's being offered in the district.
Thank you, Teresa. Good evening, everyone. With May being Mental Health Awareness Month, and Orange County Schools is now working to assist staff with managing their social emotional well-being during this time. OCS is offering a series of 6-session workshops on social emotional well-being for all staff. These sessions are being provided by Kelly Underwood, a licensed clinical social worker who has a clinical expertise in the area of trauma. The first session occurred on May 15th and was attended by 30 staff. The second session was held today and over 60 staff members attended. Feedback from staff has been positive and they have welcomed this opportunity.
So that concludes, thank you all. That concludes our COVID-19 focus areas update. And so at this time, we will certainly entertain any comments or questions from the board.
Will?
Okay. Go ahead, Matthew Roberts.
I have one comment that a lot of our parents' income has probably changed during the coronavirus outbreak. And I think to qualify for some of these benefits, they can show 1 month's income. If that's true, I would hope that we're making sure that parents know that if income has changed, to use the new monthly income.
All right. Sarah Smiley.
Yes, and just to ditto what Mr. Roberts said, I saw a statistic that some of you may have seen that at this point, I think it's 40% of people making $40,000 or less have lost work and income. So this is a very good point. I would love for this topic to come earlier in the agendas. I did not understand our agenda adoption process at the beginning of this call, so I wasn't able to make the motion to move it up. But I would love to see this topic move up because I thought it was really unfortunate last time that we ran out of time. And this is the heart of what we're doing right now. So I understand there may be things to approve, et cetera, but I would really like to see this moved up. And this is a massive undertaking that the district is doing, rethinking everything that we are doing. And so just kudos to everyone for continuing to, be nimble and to be learning. I heard a number of things that were suggestions that I had on our last call that I see are already happening. Making random phone calls to families to see how it's going, getting the choice boards out earlier. Thank you for that. Involving parents and students in the discussions about how to move remote learning forward. Those were some of the ones that I noted. So thank you for continuing to take feedback and evolve this. It is so massive. And I appreciated the idea that you will keep it simple, because one thing that I've been thinking about, as much as I love that we are learning and continuously evolving things, it also is, just as a parent, like a constant sort of adaptation on my end too. And so I think the idea of like figuring out in this time period before next year, like what is our strategy exactly, how do we do it, and then how do we make it really simple for families to engage with, is just really, really important. And trying to avoid like continually changing it. I think the mental load of like needing to like for staff, for kids, for parents, like the mental load of needing to like revisit again is a lot. So so I will say those things. I will ask one question and then yield it to other people, but I do have some other questions. But so, okay, so one question I have is, so HES starts before the remote learning plan is due to the state. And so I'm curious how their situation is being handled as a school in terms of planning for the start of the school year.
Dr. Felder, would you like for me to speak to that?
Dr. Felder's on mute.
Sure, but she's
I'm sorry. Yes, I was giving thumbs up. I said, go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't see you. I apologize.
Sign language.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And to be honest with you, we don't have specific answers regarding Hillsborough Elementary as an individual school yet, but we do realize that like our timeline, as far as expediting this work, we are making these decisions and actions in advance of that. So our goal is not to not take Hillsborough into consideration. It's to try to make decisions to the best of our ability with the data that we have prior to if they did, begin school in kind of that normal phase. So that is our goal and our hope, which does make this a Herculean task because it just shrinks that timeline down even more. So I know that doesn't give you specifics on the, I guess the how we're going to get to that point, but definitely the what we're doing and the focus and the priority, we definitely are doing that.
Thank you.
All right, other board questions from anybody? All right, well then I do have some questions. The first one is how is EC and the food being looked at in the subcommittees as we're starting school over again? Especially looking at legal requirements and how we're reaching out to those families and meeting their needs.
So I am going to ask Sarah Pitts and Connie Crimmins to respond to your question.
Okay.
As far as food, we are constantly reviewing DPI's requirements as to what is safe and what is not safe. We have currently reached out to our school community relations department to ensure that we are hitting all communities and to engage in more involvement with them to see if there are pockets that we are not reaching until school starts, and also to see how we can offer more to staff or to students. We are also looking at potentially trying to serve students food over the weekend to ensure as food insecurities get higher, we are providing more food for our students. When school comes into session, we will be sure to follow any guidelines that are given. We are looking at social distancing and a way to serve food in a manner which keeps it safe, including potentially serving in classrooms or having covered items already set for students for them to take and go. So we will keep evaluating those as we make decisions along the line. Connie, I'll turn the rest to you.
So Sarah, before you switch over, if you don't mind, how are y'all looking at ventilation if we're required to disinfect in between events like kids coming in that are first grade, and then they leave, and then the second grade comes in, even if they're social distanced. The air quality question, given if we have to have this deep cleaning, have y'all discussed that, or what that would look like, or how we could manage that?
Yes, sir. We are having conversations with the Bud group all the time. We actually had a meeting this week with a bunch of people in different departments in the district. The sanitizer that we are currently using, which will be effective, has a contact time of 10 minutes. And when it is done cleaning, it turns into water essentially. So it is harmless and it does not have any odor. So we will continue to look at green methods to figure out how we can do that. If it requires some type of handling or pushing the air through, then we will possibly have to look at different mechanical means. But we currently have 6 air scrubbers in the district. So we would figure out a way to provide more of those, or potentially fans, in order to accomplish that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Atherton, can you hear me? Repeat
Yes.
your question.
Yeah, I was asking about how is, for your part, I guess, how is the EC being looked at in subcommittee, and any legal requirements we may have for reentry to the schools, as some of our kids have higher needs than others, and just how, what plans y'all are thinking or looking at for that?
Sure. So, with the subcommittees of Dr. Keeling's remote learning group, I've placed a person from the leadership team on each of those subcommittees, so that there is EC representation, especially, and I've placed 2 people on the reentry, so that one can focus on the operations and one can focus on the learning. And then I am on the committee with Dr. Gammon to look at the remote learning and the intensive instruction as that goes. In terms of making contacts with our more fragile students, we'll do that over the summer to have that one-to-one conversation with parents. We may employ some of their case managers, but to make sure that they are, the parents feel comfortable. And if they're not, how can we work with the parents to make sure they're comfortable, or if we have to do some remote learning for a longer period of time, making sure that we are not maintaining, but how are we going ahead and progressing students through the curriculum.
Okay. Thank you for that. I do have one other question, and then I'll yield back to it if it looks like Sarah has another question. The question I have is probably for you, Dr. Gammon, is as we're looking at this remote learning and looking at all the options, what are we doing to make sure we're having a balance of the technology, where writing skills are so important and motor skills are important, especially in our younger kids, K through 2, we're looking at options to get them technology, but how are we looking at making sure that we don't become a technology learning environment, but we're balancing out and making sure the kids are getting those fine motor skills?
Sure, that's a fantastic question. We certainly, from a writing standpoint, we have continued with the work of rolling out a K-12, but our initial focus is a K-8 writing curriculum. That work started prior to COVID-19, and they've actually continued. Our team has continued that work virtually, training teachers to roll that out for this coming year. And so we've been through 5 of 6 sessions, like PD sessions, around the writing curriculum. That will continue through the summer. We will have an intensive 4-day training in June that will be held virtually, where we'll have 75 staff members from across the district that are trained in that. And the key is we've had to make a pivot or a shift during this time to in effect ensure that writing curriculum is lifted in the environment that you're referring to. So we not only want to make sure that students can access that if they were in a face-to-face setting, but also at home. And I think that we're also looking at that as being an anchor that would take us beyond the technology piece, because their written artifacts and just that work over time, or those progressions over time, are things that we can see that are tangible evidence of student growth. So we're looking forward to that trajectory for all kids. So I can speak to that. As far as more of the hands-on at the younger grades, I do think that some of the things that we have learned from the choice board experience has been having those choices and options still available where there's still that experiential learning that's taking place. It certainly should not be a situation where we are 100% digital. I think that we want to go the direction where we know that we can have more of a core class setting where we weren't able to do that this spring. But we definitely want to continue with best practice pedagogy to the best of our ability, which doesn't always mean digital. It could be non-digital.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smiley?
Thank you. I had some questions around the 2-in-1 Chromebooks for Mr. Jones. And I think you had given some level of presentation about those earlier. As I thought about our budget environment, I wondered, like, what's their sort of like rate of breakage and replacement? And, I know early models of those things were really prone to issues. And also, like, are they more expensive? So I know that they like are very popular. I'm wondering about the costs that we see sort of in the short and long term on that.
So the cost difference, of course, we haven't gone through the bid process, but what we're seeing is it's fairly minor. It's maybe $20 to $25 a unit. And it gives a lot more flexibility, especially for the younger students and for people who are in the arts. It's also going to be really critical, the 2-in-1 units for the teachers, because it gives them, teachers and administrators, a lot of options of roaming, and it gives us the opportunity to have what we're calling roving interactivity, where the teachers can move around the classroom and connect wirelessly into these flat panels, which are far more cost effective than trying to maintain the old fleet of projectors. And in terms of breakage rates, what we're hearing anecdotally is the hinge failures are a big issue with traditional Chromebooks. We're actually hearing the hinges do better because there's no stress point. They can just open 360 degrees. But we are hearing that they're more prone to being dropped because people are converting them from one form to another. That said, we had a lot of success getting accidental damage as part of our the cycle that we're currently at the end of, and we're going to be seeking that out for these devices as well. And we'll have enough of an overage at every school to serve as a loaner, so we can get that stuff turned around and repaired with very minimal students and staff.
Thank you. Well, I did have another question.
So you want to swap back and forth?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. This one is to Mr. Jones as well on the technology. So for the bus pilot we're doing, are we able to see or get the data on how many people are connecting and the duration to get a feeling for how effective this is whilst we go through the pilot?
There's 3 data points we're looking at. One is how many people are connecting into them. 2 is how much data they're using, because a lot of these bus hotspots will charge per gigabyte, and then thirdly, how many service calls we're getting at our help desk. The bus that's doing this trial, there's a sign on the door that gives them the Wi-Fi network and password, and gives them a phone number that folks can call, and our staff is prepared to walk folks through any kind of connectivity issue. So the usage rate, the amount of data, and the number of support calls will help us get some good metrics on how cost effective this solution is.
Excellent. Ms. Smiley?
Okay, so let me get out some of my other things that I really liked in the presentation, and I'm glad that I'm hearing we're doing. One is giving students the opportunity to improve their grades, including over the summer and into next school year. I really liked that as a way to sort of address some of the ways that kids may be challenged right now and have a hard time, improving their grade right now. I love the workshops for staff. I mean, if you find the participation is growing and growing, maybe we offer a second round of them. I think staff mental health is just an incredibly important piece here, and so really glad to hear about that. Really glad to hear about the PEBT messages going out, Ms. Cobb, so that families can be aware of that. And then my last one is not a question, it is a thought, which is the piece about teachers providing feedback to families, sort of narrative feedback. I'm really interested in that. I think that's great, particularly if it's the thing that is on my mind about it is like, how do we do that well? How do you give feedback well to a family in this situation? And the two thoughts that I have, one is around providing feedback sort of in service of where students are going and what they're going to need for their future, right? So not sort of in a judgmental of the past kind of way, being clear about where students need additional growth and where they, have succeeded, and then but sort of an orientation towards and for next year as a supportive thing. The other piece is providing feedback on social and emotional learning right now feels broad. It feels a bit complex given the ways that kids may be experiencing all the things they may be experiencing right now, and so it feels fraught. And I just wanted to share that. And I don't know exactly what that kind of feedback looks like, but just that I think it seems to potentially sort of interact with like how kids may be responding to trauma in this moment. Maybe it's a semi-question about how you're thinking about that.
I think I can respond about the social emotional piece. It's not actually looking at how students are since we've been out, but how students were interacting with each other in a social emotional way from August up until that cutoff point. So even all the feedback that we're giving is not anything that happened since we've been out of school, but it's all about what are those things based on our power standards that students were successful about. Just like you said, giving good, feedback about Sharita was doing very well in this subject, and we could stand to need some support in this area, and possibly providing some ways that parents can provide that support over the summer. But when we talk about the social emotional, we're not even looking at anything that happened since March 13th or since we've been out, but we're looking at everything that was prior to. What did they have an ability to get along with each other and show some empathy around different things that were happening with classmates and those kinds of things. So, and we are being very clear with staff about that this is not beyond that day when we got out of school. So everything prior to that, and not looking at, because we recognize just what you said, that students are probably really having a difficult time and or reacting to this in different ways based on what's going on in our society right now.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other board comments. I just have one last question that I'll ask from my list. And it's on the financing of the K through 2 devices. I know we were looking at using federal funds for that. Have we received those funds, or do we have an anticipation of when we receive those?
Mrs. Rath,
Yes, Mr.
respond to this question, please.
I sure can.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Atherton, we have not actually received those funds yet. We have been told what our allotment is. There is a process where we have to actually apply for these funds, like Title I. We have received information that says we have to have a budget submitted in their budgeting system by June the 1st. So hopefully shortly thereafter, the funds will be released to us. But as of this point in time, no, the money is not in the account yet.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Are there any other questions? I know we're coming up on 10 p.m. We've got 1 minute left. Are there any other comments? Questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a primary motion from Brenda Stevens. We have a secondary from Dr. Hal Kyoto. And we'll start with Tony McKnight.
Aye, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, no, we already have a motion. A second is yes.
Aye.
Okay. Hillary?
Aye.
Matthew Roberts? Brenda Stevens?
Aye.
Dr. Halkiotis,
Yes.
Sarah Smiley,
Aye.
and chair is aye. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight and all your patience through this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.